Welcome back to another edition of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. I am your host, Lamont Gates, once again bringing you the world of faith, metaphysicality, and spirituality. Today, my guest was not only spiritually awakened after his near-death experience, but the experience itself also launched him later on into the arena of research. Joining me, ladies and gentlemen, today is near-death experiencer Mr. Eugene Braxton. Eugene, welcome to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
Thanks, Lamont. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Eugene, I understand that you got a wealth of knowledge from your near-death experience that pushed you into further wanting to explore this. Is that so?
It did. It did expand the little I knew then. I had it when I was 14, and it did accelerate the learning process exponentially. I just absorbed books. I stayed in the libraries. I just had a hunger to learn, especially about the esoteric things, the invisible things in life. So that was one side effect, the expanded knowledge. And some of the knowledge was just divinely revealed. And I don't say download, it sounds too mechanical. It was actually a spiritual revelation that's more natural and seems more better.
Right. And obviously anybody coming back from a experience like that would come into a lot more knowledge than just what they can gain in this earthly realm. But before we get into your near-death experience and start talking about what you went through in your post-near-death experience, why don't you walk us backwards a little bit before your actual near-death experience and talk about any religious upbringings or religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs that you may have had prior to your near-death experience?
Okay. We were kind of normal as far as religious and church is concerned. We were kind of a normal family. My dad was a principal in Philly in the inner city schools. And so he took us to church. We went, we heard the lessons. And I wanted to know about things that they kind of weren't teaching in school, like how Jesus did some of his things, walked on water, healed people. I wanted to know about that stuff, how he, especially the coming back to life part, I thought was interesting. And all of the wisdom and stuff that he had in his words. Like when I was 19, I started studying like the Proverbs and some of the sermons on the mountain, that kind of stuff. And he was pretty deep. But with the near death, that took me into the realm of God and for the mystic. And that's what I consider myself, because his main goal is to have a one-on-one conscious union with God, which we all can do. And the early upbringing with religion was normal. We went to church, we were Presbyterians, we listened to the lessons. And so I had my near-death at 14. So I was still kind of comprehending that religion thing. And it was just kind of something we had to attend. I believed in God, but a lot of the other talk was for adults. And we kind of played whenever we could with the other kids in church too on the side. And sometimes we were allowed to just go outside, but we had youth groups and things like that. It was actually a good advantage to know about that other world through religion. And we had a pretty cool church. They weren't strict or anything like that, or they didn't press it into us. And Dad and Mom just wanted us to have a general knowledge of Christian religion. I thought it was good.
So with that said, you were very young, or relatively young, when you had your near-death experience, and I understand it happened in 1975. Why don't we jump to that? Why don't you tell us now what it was that triggered the near-death experience?
Yeah, Lamont, I had a near-death drowning. I used to be an athlete, played all the sports, football, wrestling, track, basketball, cross country, weightlifting. And swimming. I played the regular swimming and water polo for a couple of years. So I could really swim. And I lived in Ohio, and Ohio has a lot of lakes and ponds, pool was so high. We're going to be swimming. So we were in fact, we were at a church youth group picnic, and I jumped off a dock. I jumped up straight up high like a basketball player and came straight down with my feet pointed like a diver. I got stuck in the muck of the bottom of the lake. And some of these, there were a few other athletes from our school that drowned in that lake. There was another black track star, older, who had drowned. I didn't know about that till after. So I got stuck in the muck up to the knee, and I could not get out. I sucked in all the water and then had the near death, which was pretty extended. We can get into that. But yeah, I was young. I was 14, and I really didn't have any kind of, like when young near-deathers have it, they're not, they see it in their own worldview that's not jaded by the adult, ideas. They see it as a kid, and they see literally what they see. So I had it when I was 14, 75, and I was, now near-death hadn't started then. It wouldn't start till 77, 78. So I knew something had happened to me big, but I didn't know what. And I had been having years before that, like 10 years in fact, dreams, out of body, and lucid dreams, like sometimes stacked on each other, one after the other. And this, I might have 2 sets of that. So I would have 6 dream-like things during one night. And I had a lot of sleep disturbances with that, dreams, insomnia, because sometimes I didn't want to go to sleep because of the dreams. And then the out-of-body lucid dream. So by the time the near-death came, which is a spiritual out-of-body, that was kind of like a graduation from all of the psychic things I had had before. And the dreams in the out-of-body happens. I had about, at lowest count, Lamont, 12,000 out-of-bodies. And they were interwoven with the lucid dreams and regular dreams. Like I would have I had this one repeating dream where I kept falling off of a high trapeze. I would climb up a ladder, past the clouds to the trapeze, stand on the top, and eventually the wind would push me off. And I would, before I hit the ground, I would wake up like with a jolt and maybe even a slight headache. So after like 30 days and nights of this, I recognized in the fall that this is just that same dream. So I won't get hurt. I'll just let go. And when I said let go, I slowed down. And so I said, let me try seeing if I can fly. And as soon as I said fly, I started flying. And so this is a thought-actuated, non-verbal dimensional realm that dreams, the out-of-bodies, and the lucid dreams are in. And it's in what they call the second heaven. That's kind of in between this world and the third heaven, which is up where God is. And this being the first heaven.
Yeah, just going backwards to when you jumped into that water at age 14, I understand the buildup now. You had a lot of lucid dreaming going up to the near-death experience. Explain to us what it was you actually saw while you were trapped in this muck below when you jumped off this cliff.
Okay. Yeah, I jumped off this dock, just like in the Country Time commercials, like a pond. There was a lake, jumped off the dock, got stuck in the muck, couldn't get out, up to the knee, sucked in all the water, filled up with water, like you see in the movies where the guy is fully bloated. Fell down to the side. I fell down to die. And that first, when I was struggling to get out, that's like the struggle for life or death, to see if you'll live or die. Then, as I filled up, paralyzation started to set in too. And the eyes were still open and the ears could still hear it, but I was slowly becoming immobile. And then I fell on the side to die. When I fell down to die, Lamont, the paralyzation set in even more heavily. I could feel all the cold of that dark, mucky, like tar-like lake bottom. And when I hit the bottom, the soot came up and covered me like a cold black death blanket, and I was shivering fully. And I looked up, especially with the peripheral, I looked up to see if anyone was going to dive down because there were kids up there playing. It was summertime, at least 15 of them. No one came down. So I lay on my side. It was full of air. I could feel the paralysis, or what they call rigor mortis, starting to set in. And I could hear the heartbeat. And as I lay there and shivered, the beating got louder and louder until I was the only thing I could hear. The eyes locked in one straight position. So like when you see in the movie and the killer kills someone, and then they show the killer standing over them, the person can literally still see them but can't move. The killer might think that the person's dead, but it does take a while for the body to fully shut down. That goes beyond the point where equipment can detect it, and they're still slowly dying. It takes, they say it takes approximately 6 minutes if you don't have like a sudden death where you explode or dynamite or something like that. Approximately 6 minutes to die. And it seemed like it took me at least that long. Although the time when that shift occurred from when I was paralyzed on the bottom, there was a shift in consciousness where it became, everything slowed down. And the thinking and the sensing, it slowed down. And but the body was shutting down. And I could feel Lamont, organ by organ, just shutting off like candles, like soft candles. I could feel the liver. And I knew exactly what was going on, the kidneys, the lungs. And until it came to a point where I wasn't breathing at all. That had long stopped. I was still awake and I could hear the heartbeat and my eyes were locked straight ahead, although I could see on the peripheral and hear. And then my senses and mind started operating on the dream consciousness where things were slower and it's more nonverbal. At a certain point, Lamont, the pain, and I was shivering just like if you and I were outside in the blizzard with a wet blanket. I couldn't stop shivering. So suddenly, like a switch, the pain stopped. It clicked off, and I felt like a warm, glowing buzz, just like a nice comforter around you. And I knew somehow that everything was going to be all right, even though I knew I was dying and would die if someone didn't come and get me. And no one ever came. So I locked into position. The pain had stopped. I had given up the struggle for life or death. And then all I could do then was stay in that side position and keep my eyes straight ahead. And I was listening to the heartbeat, and it got slower and slower and slower. And then it stopped. And when it stopped, there was a big boom, and everything went dark. And there was nothingness. There was complete blackness. And that's what I call the dark void. It's a period of darkness that comes after death and comes before reconsciousness after death. The person does regain consciousness after death in approximately 15 to 22 seconds. That's the exact same time it takes for the spirit body to come out of the physical body during an out of body. Near death is a spiritual out of body. It has spiritual aspects, but it's still an out of body. And the time of spiritual ascension from the physical is exactly or similarly close to the out of body. And so later, as I reflected upon it for decades, I saw that out of body was the permanent out of body. So complete blackness in that dark void. And it was like being in a coffin with no sight or sound, like that. And some have surmised that may be like where hell might be, except maybe with super wild visions and hallucinations. So it's complete blackness. 15 to 22 seconds later, I pop awake in a round sphere that was like a gyroscope. In fact, it was just like that Diluvian man who's inside that gyroscope thing. that Da Vinci drew, just like that. And it was like I was inside of an atom. And as the atom dematerialized, as it became invisible, my spirit body became visible. And I could look right through it, and it was glowing. It was translucent, and it was sparkling inside. And at the same rate that this gyroscope dematerialized, I materialized. And it only took about 4 seconds. Slowly materialized, just like you see on Star Trek. That was just like it, the sparkling and everything. And I was floating, and it seemed natural because in out of body or dream, in that second heaven dimension, it is natural. And all you have to do is think about going this way or that way, and you do. So I was floating, and I saw my body materialized, and I realized that I was somewhere in time and space, but I didn't know where until I looked down and I saw my dead body down there. And that made me remember what had just happened, that I had died. Yet I realized that I'm still alive right here. And I looked down and saw the body and kind of just considered it like a mannequin, because the real me is right here. So after realizing, I call that the realization of time and space, because I realized the time was the time of death. I saw that I had just died and had regained consciousness after death. And the space was the afterlife, which is in between earth and heaven. And they're kind of like, yeah, those 3 levels. And so the afterlife is also where all those things happen. It's a temporary stay until the person advances on, which I'll explain too. So I regain consciousness after death, realize that I'm dead, see my body. I'm not even concerned because the real me, the higher me, the invisible me, is right here. And I was used to that form from the years of out of bodies. And this is interesting, Lamont. So after I realized that I'm dead, I look around, and at first everything seems green. And that was kind of because of the water that I was in. I was probably maybe 10 feet above my physical body and still in the lake. And then, and this happens in dreams. Then I suddenly appeared into what they call a life review room. Now, I didn't go there voluntarily or of my own volition. I was suddenly there. So I just accepted that, and I appeared in this room. And I can show you a picture. Yeah. I appeared in this room, and it was like a floating circle or a giant tire, or remember those rides at the amusement parks that we used to get into, and we'd hold on to the bars and go round and round, then the floor would drop.
Yes.
About like that. And so I appeared in the middle of this thing and was floating right in the middle of it. And I hovered there, and there were 3 screens right here. The thing was revolving, and Lamont, the ring went one way, while the outer ring went one way, while the inner ring went the other way, and that means something too, which I'll explain later. But so I was in the middle of that life review room, and I was hovering in the middle of it, and the screens came on. One showed me everything I had ever did. One showed me everything I had ever thought and everything I had ever said. And I could see them multidimensionally, all at the same time like that, in my mind's eye. And if I had ever done anything to someone, like one time I threw a rock at a kid at camp, and it showed me that. And it put me in the place of the boy and I took his place and got hit by the rock and saw exactly what he felt that I had done to him. At that camp, he actually did throw a rock back at me and hit me too. But I saw that in that life review room, everything. And that was an interesting thing too. It was at the life review room scene that a voice said to me, asked me these 3 questions. What have you done for yourself? What have you done for others? And have you always believed in me? And the answers was, yeah, I had helped others. I had done the best to help myself, and I had always believed in him. And when I said that I had always believed in him, the scene changed again. Another lapse of consciousness. I found myself on a beach. Now, also, Lamont, at the time when I was asked those three questions, and the scientists that I worked with asked me, who was that speaking? Was that God, Jesus, some other deity? And what I know is that there was another presence or being exhorting on my behalf to the speaker that I should be, that I had done all those three requirements to his satisfaction. So there was like a side mentor who was on my side. It's maybe the Son of God, Muhammad, Buddha, whoever, was exhorting to God on my behalf that he's okay and he should be allowed in. And that happened as I was, telling him, answering his three questions. What have you done? And have you always, and as soon as I said, yes, I have always believed in you, the scene changed. I was on a beach-like setting, just like that in the movie Contact with Jodie Foster. And I stood there and looked around, and in the horizon, there was a sun. In fact, it's on this picture. In the horizon, there was a sun that I could see, and the sun was orange, just like a sunrise. As I looked at it in the horizon, it slowly started to, lift up faster than it normally would, lift up like in a movie. And so it rose up into the air. And as I looked at it, I rose up in unison with it, Lamont. It was about, at first, it was as far away as the horizon. And as it rose up, it came across the sky too. Until it was about approximately 50 yards to 75 yards away. Like if you think of a football field, about that close. I was in the air about the height of a street lamp. And the thing was in the air, I guess about 4 or 5 stories. I was high enough where I wasn't afraid of falling on it. And I didn't ascend or levitate on my own volition. Something lifted me up and I went with it. In this NDE and in other NDEs, there's a movement upward through layers and levels, psychologically and physiologically, with that the spirit body does. And we're getting to that part now. So this sun sphere came over the sky towards me, and I rose in unison with it, and I let it happen. And at that point, my arms were straight out like that, like a person on the cross, even though the cross was the furthest thing from my mind then. This was a completely like cerebral, spiritual thing, just like the other dreams and out of bodies and lucid dreams that I've had before. So I'm on the beach, the thing comes across the sky, it's orange, and as it gets higher, Lamont, it changes to a red, imperceptibly, it just became red. Now, the orange light had super good effects on me, like healing effects, just like vitamin C. And I could feel it making me stronger and cleaning me and healing me physically and physio-spiritually. And the red was connected to when I said I had always believed in you. And that was the moment where I would soon find out if I would be able to get into heaven or not. And so the sun sphere came across the sky. And in the invisible realms, circles and spheres are common and normal, just like in our celestial galaxy, suns and planets. So to see a sphere is not uncommon. Okay, so the sun sphere or planet sphere, this giant sphere, as it's coming across, it changes into red. And the red has different effects of love and undulating rapture, where I was beginning to get to that nirvana, ecstatic, blissful thing, because God was like presenting himself and presenting his love, and it was just coming like as love. And I was feeling in waves where the orange light And any light in those realms has an effect and a sound actually too. There were no sounds with these, but there were strong effects and emotional, orgasmic, ecstatic feelings. Now, as this red sphere stood in front of me, I was told that I was allowed into heaven, that I would not die, I would live. And he knew that I had always believed it. And the person is almost literally in tears. And for a lot of experiences, even me, just thinking about it could bring on the tears. I mean, because the death alone is something. Then to meet God and have him come to you, because no human could get to God, he has to come to you. And then it's one-on-one too. That's a heavy thing, like to go through. And people really get choked up about it. I've seen truck drivers and stuff like that break down. And I used to in the 90s. But so I'm letting all this happen. I'm watching it and going with it. So and he says, you're in. And so I'm ecstatic. And at this point, I was vibrating like a paint can with love when he said that you're in heaven. I love you and you did well and you can come in. And I thought that was it. But then I ascended upward. And this is interesting because I got like a temporary physical, spiritual view of the little lake. As I went up, I looked to my side because I could feel the wind going along my spirit body. And I could see birds and stuff moving by. And I looked down. And in those realms, you don't even have to look right or left. You can just think about your mother's house and you can see it in your mind. But I looked down and I could see the lake and the trees and stuff where I just left. And I could see myself flying away from it. And as I went up, I was going through the clouds too, or getting near them. As the higher I went, the more the white light appeared and came forth. It was right behind the clouds for me. As I went up, my spirit body began to, now it was solidly invisible, kind of like this guy. It was solidly invisible with the orange and red, but it disintegrated more. It became a higher, even finer essence as I went into the white lights. And I was still in form, but in vibratory, teeming, like the teeming of a ginger ale. This is like that. So it's going to a higher, even finer vibratory density, a lower, So I saw that the spirit body was dematerializing even more. I was becoming more of that highest essence, just the pure mind. So I got into the white line. As I approached the white light, the spirit body I was just about completely invisible then. But I did feel this disintegration into a higher, even finer body. And I got up into the white lights. And just like you heard, they didn't blind you. They were soft lights, like you can buy those light bulbs that are soft, have a little coating around it. It was super bright for all I could see. I was covered in this fog light. It was fog light because it surrounded you, but the light went right through the fog. And until there was a fog, it was just light. And so lights are always important to notice in that. And all these three lights had effects on me. The orange, the red, and then the white. So the white light had the strongest effects. And they say that only 1 in 10 make it into the white lights, and only 1 in 4 even remember their near death. So I got into the white lights, and I was still slowly ascending upward. The body was still materializing, but more solid than disintegrated. Now the rays just came and came, and the white light rays were mainly responsible for the advanced knowledge that was given to me, and then I would later get. And so that accelerated the learning, the knowledge. And the scientists know that there is knowledge in light. And so the knowledge, that light came into me. And also it super cleansed me. It was like a spiritual cleansing. And it was necessary because that was the last cleaning, the white hot, not hot, but the white purity of the super spiritual cleansing that I would get. And it was necessary because then I would soon meet God, and I had to be fully clean to meet him inside and out. So that was another super cleansing that I got. So the white light fully purifies me, and it cleans and illuminates the mind to a high degree. And then after that white light, and because of the length of the story, we got up to this part pretty quick. But a lot of times I don't get up to the part where God is because it takes so long to get there. You have a better understanding than there, so I can go along with it a little faster with you. So I get through the white lights. There's no control. There's only releasing and surrendering. Complete, like a loving surrender. And I ask people later, if God would take total control of you after you die, would you let him? And everyone said yes, even while they lived, if it was God doing it. So I go through the white lights, and I can even then I could feel the changes that were in me, and super clean. And so again, there's a lapse of consciousness where I'm in the lights, fully absorbing and getting clean, and then suddenly I wake up in this I wake up on the floor of a round circular room. And I'm looking and I see beings in the back. I can't make them out, but I can see beings back there. And suddenly my attention is fixed on someone who's right in front of me. And I saw this person as God, this being as God. And as I recognized who I was right next to, it started spinning this thing like a blender. This is what kind of facilitated the merging and melding part of that marriage with God that the mystic strives for and that anyone can attain. And here's an interesting and important thing too. Before the merging and blending started with this God being, I looked up at him, and as I woke up, my head was down, and when I looked up, I could blurrily see him and the beings in the back. And when I tried to focus on him, I was put asleep. And I looked up twice, and I was put asleep firmly the first time, and I looked up again because I really want to see God. And then I was put asleep fully, and the merging and melding started. And as I was knocked out, the merging and melding started. It was a soft knockout. I wasn't immediately knocked out, but I was just put to sleep. And as the blending started, and I merged in with God and was able to absorb as much as a human could take of him. And after that merging thing happened, there was another lapse of consciousness, and I woke up at the bottom of that lake, and something propelled me up out. And just like a fish that wakes up in a boat, when you throw him on the dock of the boat, I woke back up and was able to come up to the top. And I choked out under the dock all that lake water and crawled up on the beach of that lake. And then I was in full shock because of what had happened and that I had just drowned. And then the God scene. And all I could remember was scraping the muck off of my leg. And then I repressed it back for a couple of years. So that was the near death. And
very extensive. It sounds like you had a very deep, what I call a transcendental experience here. Very extensive. A lot of people, some people go out of their bodies, they pop back in. Some people go through what they perceive a tunnel, go through, they see some light, they perhaps see deceased relatives, and they're told maybe it's not your time, but you went to various levels, it appears, in your near-death experience. And one thing I want to say is, in terms of research, Dr. Moody wrote the book, coined the term near-death experience in his book, Life After Life. Very often, as I was going through the pages of that book, I saw many people who had the similar instances that you had, the life review, number one, the out-of-body experiences, and these questions that they were asked. What have you done for others? What have you done for yourself? So, and it seems to me, and I think we spoke about this behind the scenes, that those early near-death experiences before the 90s, before the 2000s, maybe even before the 80s, the 60s, the 70s, you had yours in 1975. His book seems to reflect an era where when people would have these near-death experiences, those particular questions were at the helm. I read a lot of near-death experiences that were in the 2000s and the 90s, more recent. You don't hear those questions very often anymore. It's almost as if the spirit realm, I don't know, was testing a certain generation. It's hard to really explain, but when you read the research and you look at the time periods and when certain things happen in these near-death experiences, and when you read current research and current near-death experiences, you kind of see a little difference there. Not a whole lot, but definitely in those questions. I noticed a lot of those questions were asked to people who had their experiences in the 60s and the 70s for some reason.
Yeah, Lamont, you're a good student and researcher of the near death. You know a good amount, and I was glad to get an announcer who knows like the research side of it as well as like the experiences, what they go through too. So I was glad to talk to you because you have a good. I could tell from your other interviews that, well, I said he knows a lot. That's why I asked you, have you had a near death? Because it seemed like you had.
No, I have not. I just read a lot of these. I've just heard a lot of these. I've interviewed several people such as yourself, and I thank God for all of you because you bring the knowledge to the table that I think this world has been missing for so long.
Thanks, Lamont. Yeah.
And with that said, why don't you tell us the name of this book and where we can actually find it?
Mm-hmm. The name of the book is America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle. The America's Mystic was kind of a name given to me by the Art Bell guy. He said mystic. And so I put the America's most experienced in because I figured there might be other people in other countries who are better. But in America, at least according to a scientist at that time, there was no one that had as much experience as many events as I did. So I just came with the title America's Most Experienced Mystic. And I'm into like being with God, the one-on-one. So the mystic was perfect for me. So it's called America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle. And it's online. I have a website too that you could get it to because Amazon takes like 90% of it. But it's deep. It's filled with a lot of things. There's chapters on dreams, out of bodies, and then it goes into the near death.
Well, with that said, I think that's, I'm sure we could spend another 3 hours talking, but I think I got a wealth of information from you here today, Eugene. And with that said, I want to thank you for coming on Real Spiritual Talk Radio and sharing with us your fascinating near-death experience and your vast knowledge and information on the topic.
Thanks, Lamont. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it was like you said, yeah, we could talk for hours more. Mm-hmm.
And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, Eugene Braxton.
Thanks, Lamont.